Hey guys, I wanted to try to review some of the newer horror movies that I really enjoyed. I'm not really a big fan of modern horror movies, and there's just something about them that doesn't have like the same feel or impact as older horror movies have on me. Uh, but there's like a few that have like stood out, and I'm like, oh, they didn't like really like scare me. They put me on edge, or kind of creep me out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to buy it. So there's the first movie I want to review is called Get Out, which was released this year, 2017, and it's directed by Jordan Peele. And Jordan Peele is a comedian, and he's famous for the TV show, sketch comedy show, Key and Peele, and then he was also on Mad TV in the early 2000s. Now, I thought it was kind of interesting, being that he is most known for doing comedies, that he was going to be directing a horror film, and that actually writing and directing it, and that this was his first time actually directing a movie. So it's like, that's going to be interesting. I want to see that because I like Key and Peele, and I like Mad TV. I don't really remember him that much from Mad TV, but I know him from Key and Peele. And the movie's about a young interracial couple. The boyfriend, the man is black and the woman is white. And the girlfriend wants to go visit her parents, and she wants to bring her boyfriend along. The girlfriend's name is Rose, and the boyfriend's name is Chris. And she wants to bring Chris along to go visit her parents. And they live in the South. I don't think they specifically say where they live in the South, but it's in the South. So, it's kind of like Buster White, so it kind of like sets Chris off a little bit. He's like, "Are you sure that your parents are comfortable with you dating a black man? You never told them, they never met me." And she's like, "Oh yeah, they're fine with that. They're like, if they had a chance, they would have voted for Obama for a third term." And he was like, he's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yeah, honey, you're gonna, you'll be fine." And so he kind of gets lulled into going. And one of the first things that is weird about, before they get there, they're driving and they get pulled over by a cop. I think that they hit a deer, and then a cop pulls them over. And when he does, he asks for the Chris's ID when he wasn't driving. It was the girlfriend that was driving. And the girlfriend's like, "Oh, why are you asking him for his license? If I was the one who was driving," he was like, "It's just for precautionary measures," or something like that. And she's like, "No, that's bullshit. You're just trying to profile him, be discrimination." And he just lets them go. And the cop lets them go because he don't want to deal with that. And then Chris gets kind of upset about it. He's like, "Well, why'd you do that?" He's like, "I could have handled that by myself." She's like, "No." She's like, "These cops, you don't understand these cops around here." Well, they finally make it to the house, and you see like the family was in a big mansion. And like once they get there, she sees two black servants. One's a groundskeeper, it's a man, one's a groundskeeper, and then the other one's a maid. And they go up to the house, and once they meet the parents are just as weird. They're like, "Oh, we heard a lot about you, Chris." And the father's like, "Oh, I don't want you to be uncomfortable because I would have voted for Obama for a third term, and we appreciate your culture and stuff." This is like every time they're around them, they have to bring up something about African Americans. Well, so they're walking around the house, and the father shows them a picture of I think it was his father, his grandfather, I think. And he's like, my grandfather was in the 1932 Olympics. I think it was 32. With Hitler, and That's when Hitler was over it, and then like Jesse Owens, and my father ran against Jesse Owens, but he lost, and after that he had a grudge against it, and he said that's why I appreciate your culture, because you guys have more physical capabilities. And Chris is like, well, he's like, maybe he didn't practice enough or something like that. And the father's like, no, that's not it. He's just like really weird. So the next day they have a party, and there's a bunch of like these rich white people come out there, and they start asking him, acting weird around. Like every time he walks somewhere, they just stop and stare at him. There's like this one scene I'm gonna get into, but they start asking him weird questions. Like this one lady comes up to him, and starts like rubbing up on him, like trying to feel his muscles and stuff. And she's like, "So is it true that you guys are good in bed and that your genitals are big and stuff?" And then like Rose is like, "Oh my god, like why would you ask that and all that?" And then like one guy was like, white's out of fashion, black's back in fashion. And they just say like the weirdest stuff. And he meets this one guy who's blind. He's like the kind of the normal look, like he's like normal kind of, and he's like, I want to invite you to my studio so you can take, because Chris is a photographer, and the guy was like, I want to invite you to my studio to see like my pictures and stuff. And Chris is like, all right. He's like, I can do that. But we meet this one couple, and it's an older white lady and a younger black guy, and he's just acting like a robot. He kind of acts like how the servants act. He's like, Chris is like, do you think this is weird? And he's like, are you okay? And stuff. And he's like, yes, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Like, that's how he talks. Well, Chris thinks it's kind of funny, so he starts taking pictures at the party, and he takes a picture of the young black guy, and like something happens, and like the black guy just like snaps of the out of like that dreamlike phase, and he goes like, "Get out of here! Get the fuck out of here! Get out! Get out!" He's like flipping out, and like they're like, "Oh, we gotta take him back in, to get him calmed down." And then later on, they're like, "Well, what happened?" They're like, "Oh, he just had like a panic attack or something like that." Later on in the night, the wife, like I probably said earlier, she's a hypnotist, and she keeps trying to convince Chris that she can break him out of that smoking habit because she did it to her husband. And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So what she does is she has a teacup, and when she spins it around, she talks to him, and it kind of lulls him into this like hypnotic state. And what she did was like, I guess I'm gonna have to like spoil some of the things. Uh, what she does is she brings up his mother's death, and she said, you still feel guilty about your mother's death because you weren't there, and when she called you, or when they called you to, check up on her, you didn't answer the phone, and he, starts crying. It's a really like depressing scene because, she's like freaking like playing games with his mind and, trying to take over his mind. And she says, you're in the sunken place, now sink. And then like you see like a shot where it's him as a kid, like going backwards into the bed, and then he's in the chair as an adult, and they're going back, and he falls down like this. It's a pretty cool scene. Like it looks like they're so sinking into the chair and in the bed, and he falls down into this black pit. It's just black everywhere. I don't like this on the cover, and he can't yell. No one can hear him, and all he sees is like the screen of the mother talking to him. And he wakes up the next day, and sorry, my computer screen went down. He wakes up the next day, and he's like, "Wow, that was a weird dream." And she was like, "Yeah, my mom's like, you know, she likes to like mess around with people and stuff." So later on, I'm gonna try to hurry up because I don't want the review to be too long. But later on, you find out after Chris gets hypnotized again, because what the family's doing is the spoiler. They kidnap black people and they hypnotize them, and then what they do is they transfer their brain, the white person's brain, into the black person's body, and there's like a little sliver left of the black person's brain in there to actually know what's going on, but they hypnotize them to keep them in the sunken place so they can't tell anyone what's going on. And you find out that like the maid is the maid right here in the window. She's actually the grandmother of the Rose's family, and the maid, all she does is look in the mirror at herself, and I guess the grandmother was very narcissistic and wanted to look at herself all the time. The grandfather, they don't have a picture of the guy that he possessed or took over. Because he was so mad about losing in the Olympics, he took over a younger black guy's body, and all he does is run around in the yard. And I was trying to remember what the program was called. I think it was called the Monarch program that was on the video that Chris was tied down and forced to watch. But I'll tell you, man, the ending was freaking amazing. Like, everyone gets their comeuppance, maybe except the girlfriend, I'm not sure, but like the father gets stabbed to death by antlers. But there's like a deer head on the wall, and the father made a comment about it when after they hit the deer. He's like, certain things have to be, exterminated, or it would overrun the population, and that's probably a connection to their Nazi heritage or something. But there's a deer head on the wall, and Chris takes it and stabs the hell out of him after they were trying to like put his brain into the blind photographer's head, into the blind photographer. They were trying to put the blind photographer's brain into Chris's body. So Chris breaks out. He freaking stabs the dad with the deer head, the antlers, and then he bashes the brother's head in. The brother's actually this guy right here, but there's a good, he's a human, but yeah, bashes his brain in with a I forgot what it's called. It's like one of those little balls, like I forgot the name of it, but it was like a little ball, and he like smashed his head and like caved it in. The mother, I think I'm trying to remember. I think he stabbed the mother. I thought the mother should have more brutal death because she's the one that freaking put him in the sunken place. And then the girlfriend, he fights her at the end, and then he gets saved by his friend. Which the friend was pretty funny too. He's a TSA agent, and he's always like calling Chris. He's like, "Oh, maybe they kidnap you. You're gonna be their sex slave and all that." He's like, "Man, I'm telling you, these white people are weird." And then I was like, what? It was pretty funny though. But yeah, I really did enjoy the movie. I mean, it was. I'm sorry, like if I was rambling on about the plot and it makes sense, but I mean, it's not like the most groundbreaking horror movie ever made, but I did like it. It kind of reminded me of like the Stepford Wives or Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something like that. But I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it if you like try to want to watch it again and see get a better analysis of it. But anyways, that's my review.